lead gen models on page 55.
All righty.
Ready?
We are live. Going to last episode or last live, we were really diving into mindset. Mindset, thinking big, being open for creativity, because really you have to have your mind in the right place to start thinking about then and diving into the models that your business is going to need. And MREA talks about 4 models that you need in your business. And I'll just mention those quickly. And then we're going to have Anthony actually show us what these look like, because Anthony pointed out to me, I thought we could just talk about it because I'm a talker. And he made me realize that, nope, you need to be able to show the folks what we're talking about, because it's just a little bit too complex. And he's absolutely right. So model 1 is that we're going to talk about is the economic model. Then model 2 is our lead generation model. And then model 3, the lead gen model is a pretty big area, probably one of my favorite ones because it talks about the 33 touch program. And then model 3 is your budget model. And then model 4 is your organizational model. So Anthony, I know you have to get a couple things pulled up just so we can share with the folks. But you've been teaching models for a while now. What do you think is important about these models for agents in their success when trying to think big and grow big?
Yeah, so good question. The first thing I think of is what is a model? You know, why do we use models in business? And if we go back to its simplest form, when you have a business plan when you start a business, right? That business plan has a marketing plan, a financial plan. And when we look at our business models, it's very similar to that. So we have a lead generation model that says this is where we anticipate to receive business or get business from. That includes a marketing budget inside of it, but also just all things you're doing to generate leads for your business. And that's any business. The economic model tells us what we can expect. What's our input? What's our output? So when you look at an economic model for a real estate business, it's leads, contacts, appointments set, appointments taken, excuse me, clients, contracts, closings, and then revenue. So that's an economic model. And like you said, we'll show the images here in a minute because it's easier to see than just talk about. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to plan out the rest of the business. It allows us to finish the other 2 models, which is the budget model and the organizational model. Is in the economic model, when we know input and output, then we know this is what it's going to cost on the input to get the output, or this is what it's going to take in terms of people resources on the input to get the output. The output's your goal, right? So the models allow you to get you to your goal by saying, okay, well, my goal is to sell 100 homes. Great. What kind of input and output are you going to need in order to sell 100 homes? What are you going to need in terms of lead generation, marketing costs, people resources, et cetera? So the models allow us to build something without going and doing it. We can build it on paper and in spreadsheets and charts and things like that, and put a plan together so that we know this is how we get from 0 to 25. This is my model for 0 to 25. This is my model for 25 to 50, 50 to 100. So what's most important about the models is it gives you the roadmap in order to get to your goal. And it allows you to track that map as you're going, because a roadmap in building any business is not from point A to point B. It's not a straight line, right?
Yep.
So as you're building the business and you're going from 0 to 25 and what you expected changed, Now you're going left, you're going right. The model allows you to adjust your turns or your path throughout the way to keep you on track to your goal. Let me show you real quick what I'm talking, just one part of what I'm talking about here. So the lead generation model, for instance, is, let me move just some windows around here real quick. There we go. Can you still see my screen?
Yep, I can see it. You're good. Nate kindly put recording in progress signs on our doors for us. Yeah.
I'm gonna need to keep that. Okay, so when you look at the lead generation model, it has what you may look at down below here, a mini economic model, meaning like what are the key performance indicators in this process? Prospecting and marketing, offer value, exchange value for information. You could track each one of those pieces in your lead generation model. Like, what is the impact of my prospecting or the impact of my offer that I'm making? Now, it gets complicated. We sit down and do full days of training to have teams and agents develop what their offer value is. It's not the same for everybody.
Right.
You know, the value that somebody gets from using any two different agents, that value is different. And the choice that they make to use one agent versus the other is different because they saw different value, right? So the value that we help people create is really individualized. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's, you know, more geared towards them. And then I like just that it shows you a quick graphic of, you know, your prospecting allows you, our business wants to be prospecting based, right? But you have to do prospecting and marketing.
Yep.
Prospecting is just your ability to go out and get business from people that you know, who already like and trust you. And you can go and meet new people and make them people that know and trust you as well by putting them into your database and building a relationship and so on and so forth. So this kind of shows you, like, in a marketing versus prospecting situation, you know, what's more money intensive. Marketing's more money intensive. Prospecting is, you know, less money intensive. Marketing's more passive. Prospecting's more proactive, time intensive, and so on and so forth. So prospecting is more time intensive, less money intensive. So again, I know we're talking about the models in general and what they do for us, but I wanted to show you how, like, there's a model within the model. So there's the lead generation model that says this is where I get all of my business from. And then when we're training folks, we're training them on a model that you see here inside of the lead generation model that says this is how you balance your time and money. If you want to balance your time, maybe prospecting is not your best option. Maybe you want to go with less time and something more passive, and therefore you have to put money into marketing. But whatever your goals are, not everybody has the same goals. A lot of people's goals are, hey, like, I want to spend less time. Other people's goals are, hey, I want more return on my time. And for that, those people are going to prospect and they're going to get a higher return on their time because they're not going to chase around leads that, don't know and trust them. Right? So there's a model inside of the lead generation model that allows you to balance out your life, right? That allows you to go after money goals or go after life goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and they all tie together because obviously you have to look at your economic model and your budget model to also kind of determine what you can do within your lead gen model.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me show you the economic model real quick. And I don't think the one in here is the best picture of it, but it'll definitely help.
What I like about the models, because when we were talking about mindset, that felt like, you're just prep, like that was the prep work. And the models are like the action.
Yeah, 100%. And the tracking.
Right.
The tracking and reporting. Well, anybody who has grown a business before will tell you that like you can't do it without the tracking and reporting. Otherwise, you can, but you're making decisions kind of in the dark,
Right. You're just assuming.
in a vacuum, for sure.
Yep.
So here's a company economic model. And then Brittany, we teach teams and agents to track their own conversions throughout other steps in the process too. This just simply shows how you get from net income to the total number of appointments that you need per week. We take this even further and we can create a scorecard for different lead sources, or we can create a scorecard for each agent that says, this is how many leads they got, how many contacts that they made, how many appointments they set. So again, I want you to kind of see that there's a model within this model. The economic model, per the MREA book, it's a model for you and your growth as a company or as a team or as a single agent business. And then on a daily basis, this is for the whole year. You can break any one of the positions in your company or your team, you can break those positions down and have little mini economic models for them. That's your tracking and reporting. We call them scorecards.
Yep.
Right? But what a scorecard is, a mini economic model that we use in order to hold people accountable or just help them in training to say, hey, you got 10 leads, but there was only one contact. Let's see what we can do to help you get that up to 2, 3, or 5, right? So again, we have the models that give us the overview, and then there's these tools that we use like scorecards inside of the model that help us track daily activities and people resources. So looking at this though, just a real quick overview, you have net income at the top, operating expenses, cost of sale, total GCI. So you're adding it backwards. You're starting with income first. You're saying, hey, the most important target or goal for me, and in order for me to get to my family and life and business and health goals, I have to have this amount of income as profit. And we always start with 40%. And then you add in, what do you expect your operating costs to be? And then what do you expect your cost of sale to be? And I know we don't have all day to talk about what each one, it goes into each one of these categories. There is a budget model for that. We'll go, but I'll try not to go down through every single line item. But cost of sale in general is, the agents that are working with you, and marketing oftentimes gets put in there as well. And then, sometimes if you have your CPA will ask you to put a third-party transaction coordinator in there versus putting them under operating expenses. If it's a full-time employee, then it goes under operating expenses.
Okay, but if it's like one of the services we offer where you pay as you go,
Correct.
it's cost of sale. That makes sense.
There you go. And then the other cost of sale is your broker splits and transaction fees. Those go under cost of sale as well. And then you add all that up, and it's going to be you're going to give yourself the total GCI goal. And again, I won't go line by line in the rest of this, but seller side on the left, buyer side on the right. And the purpose of the economic model is to put your conversion rates in here so that if I have to sell X number of home listings for sellers and I have to work with and sell X number of homes on the buy side, these are the number of appointments I need to take, and therefore the number of leads we need to generate in each one of those categories in order to get there, right? Was that clear?
Yeah, that's very clear. And just my tech plug, what I love about this is it could be a lot of math. Our command program in the goal setting, you can plug in your numbers and it calculates everything out for you.
I think I might be able to show that real quick.
Oh, you just have to hit command on the top left there.
Of course, you would have to tell me to do that.
I'm used to it.
Right here on Facebook Live. Why not?
That's why I'm the tech ambassador. No, I'm kidding.
Yep. But yeah, you put your goals in. Mine are going to show zeros because I don't work with clients, but you can put your goals in and it'll show you how many people you need to have in your cultivate feed. contacts, right?
Yep.
How many appointments, how many active clients under contract, there's your buy and list side. So I like what Brittany said, which is, this is the plan. You have to have the systems to back up the plan. You don't want to be tracking this on paper.
You'll be spending so much time just tracking.
Yeah.
So if you have something that'll track it for you and you can get away from spreadsheets, it'll make it a lot easier. And then what I love about our system is it lets you see how you're doing compared to your goal throughout the year. So, do I got to play catch up? Am I ahead?
Yeah. So all the tracking and reporting that I'm saying you absolutely need is done for the most part automatically in there, so long as you're moving them into the right phases.
Yeah.
That tracking and reporting is done inside the system for you. So your goals are tracked in real time. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Yep.
Anything you want to add about the economic model?
I would just like to say that it's not as hard as what I think, like it can look a little overwhelming, but when I've taken your workshops, it actually isn't that hard to kind of figure this out.
Yep.
And I just think it's an eye opener, especially, like you mentioned, well, what do we need to work on? Like maybe it's not, I need more sellers. Maybe it's, you just need to work on your conversion. Like if your conversion rate's only 30%, like, okay, well, what can we do to get that conversion rate up? And then you can actually make more money with less work by just increasing that conversion rate. So when you figure all this stuff out, it really will help you see the problem areas, because it's not always more leads. Sometimes it's just simply what you're saying to people.
Right.
And you're training for that.
Yeah. And let me piggyback on top of that. So we kind of know what the standards should be, right? We can expect that you should really be able to list 50% of the listing appointments that you go to. There's going to be times where you don't. Now, a lot of agents will say, I list 100%. That might mean you're not taking enough appointments,
Right.
or you don't get enough at bats. But simply put, when you look at 50%, let's just say that's the benchmark, and somebody's not performing to a benchmark, then we know that there's a training opportunity. Right. And to your point, then you get to influence the rest of your business and your conversion rates by going and getting training or finding a tool or resource to help you convert better.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, awesome. Let's move into the budget model real quick. And again, today's just an overview because we are going to spend some time diving into each one of these models and just giving some recommendations, best practices. And again, like even talking about the standard there for listings is something that we would dive into as well. Here we go. All right, so what I love about this is, so Brittany, do you take your taxes to a CPA?
Yes.
All right. They ever give you hassle about like how you categorize things? Or I highly doubt you were one like me, where I think for the first 3 years I would just deliver like a brown paper bag full of receipts.
Right.
Right. That was totally me.
When I was in production heavily, I had QuickBooks.
Okay.
And then
I kind of could have guessed that.
Yeah. And then I gave my CPA like a very detailed, I made his job super easy.
Right.
This year, he might hate me a little bit because I didn't do that, because I was like, well, I'm not in production as much, not thinking about the fact that I was earlier in the year. So we'll see.
So what's really cool about this is once I started using this chart of accounts, and I later found out that this, even the terminology chart of accounts is like some CPA terminology or something.
Yep.
But ever since I started using this, like I never had any trouble. It's the right, the right categories, they're labeled correctly, they say the right things to the CPA, and so on and so forth. And like I said, that's how I got that one recommendation, that this is where your transaction coordinator goes. If it's a third party and you're paying it per piece, meaning you pay your transaction coordinator a flat fee for each file, and they're not an employee of yours, it can go into cost of sale. And if they are an employee, or they get paid hourly per file, then they go under cost of operating expenses. But what's neat is, there's no stone left unturned when you go all the way down through here. I told you I would try not to dive into the weeds. Start talking about each line. But yeah, you see here, cost of lead generation. And a lot of times when it's prospecting, we have here in our business expenses. And, if you have a large marketing budget that, let's say you're doing, I don't know, there's some teams that are spending $30,000, $40,000 a month in radio, TV, things like that. Like those things then really belong up in cost of sale. The only reason why I say that is because you have a model that's 40% profit, 30% operating expenses, and 30% cost of sale. So every team's going to be different. And the whole point is just to be at a 40% profit margin.
Right.
Right. So if you, again, the model tells you what it should be, and then you are able to go and mold it to what you want it to be. And there's teams that are marketing heavy, they're going to have to use some of their cost of sale to get there. It won't all fit in the operating expenses.
Right.
That would be my point.
The one thing that I like that Gary talks about with the expense piece of it is his method of you play red light, green light.
Yep.
And I actually have taken that approach now in my personal budget is, the whole red light, green light. Do you mind expanding a little bit on that?
You could probably, it's probably better explained by you just because it's newer.
Okay.
My version, go ahead and I'll piggyback on top of what you.
Sure. So, Gary, first he tells us to always think with, you want to lead with revenue. I think, especially with newer agents and maybe some experienced agents, but you get stuck with that whole, you have to spend money to make money mindset, which is partially true. It's not 100% inaccurate, but it can be dangerous because you can just start being like, well, this seems like a good marketing opportunity. And this seems like a good marketing opportunity. Next thing you know, you've made no money because you're just spending it. And the red light, green light kind of helps you have that pause and you think about the risk, does it fit with your value proposition? Does it fit within your model? Is it making you go over that 30% that you're allowed to have for expenses? And the whole point of a budget is to stick to it. So you're supposed to respect the model, not go outside of it, because that's when you get yourself into trouble. So red light, green light keeps you in the frame of your budget. And I think it stops you from making emotional decisions.
Yeah. See, that was way better than I was going to explain.
Well, I appreciate it.
I was much more direct. If it's costing you over 10% of your budget, it needs cut. If it doesn't give you a 3-to-1 return, meaning, if I spend $1,000 a month on Zillow ads and I'm not making $3,000 or more after all my other expenses come out of it, then you need to cut it. And then the last thing for me, is that you can't take on additional marketing. And so put marketing out there, you measure it, to set it to the standard, measure it. If it doesn't meet the standard, you cut it and you start something new. That's red light, green light to me is, you can't turn something on and turn something off until you have let it run the sales cycle and you have the ability to measure it and say, did it give me the return or not? And then you decide to cut it or go on to something else. The other thing that you said really that was most important to me is you have to lead with revenue. When you mentioned that, it's the most critical thing, meaning you can't go out and spend reinvest all of, your earnings. So why would you go and spend a bunch of money on marketing without going out and making money first?
Yeah.
Like you have to go out. So when we go back to that, lead generation model at the bottom, it says prospecting. You have to go out and prospect and be able to earn business on your own without spending money before you go out and start a marketing budget. You have to lead with revenue. And that's just to prove that your business can run and be sustainable before you start adding in expenses, right?
Yep.
So why would you go and spend a bunch of money on marketing when you haven't even proven that the business is operating the way that it's supposed to? So I loved your explanation. It's good.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
My favorite is the org model, just because I love my people. And, I love just building and seeing that, look, we can create this opportunity for somebody else, right? When you hire this admin, like it's not to get stuff off your plate, it's to create an opportunity for somebody, for them to grow, it's for them to, achieve their goals. And when I look at this and you look down, here's a quick view of how quickly, you get to a pretty big team. Let me take one step back. So Keller Williams, and I'm trying to be more like you and stick with the book. This is a book review. So what the book does is it breaks it down into levels. The MREA book says when you build a team, there's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, all the way up to level 7. And level 7 is where you have this millionaire real estate agent team where you're able to make $1 million in net commissions, right? And we have teams doing that. So when you look at this model, it's pretty wild how quick it can build. I think the most important thing is hire talent and hire leaders. And talent's not like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. Talent is, you know what? Now I'm going to have to turn the mic over to you and find my talent versus non-talent sheet. We're going to have to look at it today. But the point is that talent is people who, bring you solutions versus problems, right? Talent is people who they come in with hustle and they're not going to let obstacles stand in their way. I'll get the sheet. The org model real quick though says that, first level is you, and you need to focus on personal productivity. The areas that you need to master are lead generation, mindset, and vision. Second level, hiring and succeeding through others. That's your focus. And I think I'm allowed to say this because, I've coached enough people through their first hire to say that it's not about you. Like when you hire your first person, it's not about success through you. Like it's success through that other person now. So
I feel like that's a game changer for a lot of people because that's definitely a mindset shift.
it is. Well, speaking of mindset shift, and since you said it, I'll give the analogy. When I had my first child, somebody said to me, they were like, you're not going to realize how selfish you used to be. And I was like, what? I'm not a selfish person. Like, what are you talking about? And as soon as my son was born, I was like, oh my gosh, like now everything I do has to be about this person. Right?
Yep.
Same thing with a hire. Like now everything has to be about that person, at least until they're operating and now you're having another level of success. It's no longer about you. What do you think about that?
I love that because I think a lot of times when people are thinking about hiring, it's, I have to get this off my plate. I have to get this off my plate. And that's part of their pause in hiring is because they have so much on their plate that they don't have time to hire someone.
Yeah.
But really, if you start thinking about the opportunity that you can give someone and how you two can grow this business together, makes it a little bit more exciting and gives you more passion versus looking at it as a nuisance.
Yeah. When you started out about them, then you have a vision of their future and where they want to go. And the way to get a rock star hire and somebody who's going to stay with you, because I think that those two things are probably what everybody wants most. The way to do that then is to know what their vision is and their goals are for their life and how this serves that. And when you now have the ability as a leader to help them build their own personal life, personal vision, not that you have to be in their business. It's just that it creates the culture that you're succeeding together, which creates the stickiness that they stay and help you do this. So that's what success through others means to me.
Yeah, I like that description. And the nice thing too is, just because I'd mentioned the fear of hiring, is we do have career visioning coming up, and that's what that's about, right? Is how to make the right hire.
Yep. Yeah, so that's what, December 16th?
I believe so. I checked my calendar, but it's not in there, but I do believe
If we have anybody on the call today that's interested in that, let us know.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best, and it's career visioning, meaning, the hiring process, helping employees develop a vision of their career so that, just like everything I said, so that their career fits into your vision. Probably one of the best leadership trainings I've ever had. And it's a hiring training. But the reason it's a leadership training is because it's all about how to lead people. It's all about how in the hiring process, if you're leading with them in mind, then it's going to work out. And it's very unique because, as we talk about this, it kind of sounds like we're saying, hey, like, give them everything they want, right? In order to hire them. That is definitely not what we're saying. What we're saying is when you ask the right questions, their responses of what they want in life are either going to fit what you want or they're not, right? So we're not trying to sell them on the position, and they're not trying to sell us on why they should be in that position. We're talking about their goals to see if their goals match our goals. That's career visioning. That's being a leader and getting out of being I'm not even sure the right word, a manager.
Right.
Right. Or a dictator, God forbid.
We definitely don't train on how to be a micromanager. We want the opposite of that.
So second level is succeeding through others, areas of mastery, hiring, training, and accountability. So how do you get areas of mastery? How do you master these areas, Brittany?
Well, you go to training.
Oh, kind of obvious. I get it.
You go to training. The accountability, I think, is huge. And then you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
And it's one of those things we've talked about. You got to be okay with failing forward. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but there's probably going to be a point that you make a bad hire and you're going to learn from your mistake. You know what I mean? Or you're going to do something that you're like, this may have been, we talk about right person, wrong seat, right? So maybe they do fit with your vision, but maybe you'll find out that like they're better off doing something different with you.
Yep.
The training helps you prevent from making that bad hire, but honestly, you learn by doing.
For sure. I'm sitting here thinking, what other words can we use for accountability? People don't like that word.
Yeah, they don't like that word. They feel like that word means micromanaging, but it doesn't.
Well, you kept saying, well, you got to do it. You got to, like, that's all that means to me is, did you do it? Are you going to do it? Right? Are you going to do what you said you were going to do? Are you going to do what the plan says you're supposed to do?
Or do you have a stack of resumes and KPAs on your desk that you haven't looked at?
All right. Third level, leadership and systems, laying a foundation for growth. You can get away with having no systems when you have one person. As soon as you add two, one of my old coaches, Gary Harper, he does this exercise where, he draws like, there's you, and then you add in the second person, and there's 3 times the complexity in a process, right?
Yeah.
And then you add in the second person, And now there's 3 times complexity from there to there, and you add yourself back in, and now that there's 3 people, it's like 27 times complexity.
Oh, geez.
I don't know the exact numbers, but it's a pretty cool exercise. That's what I think of every time I see this. And systems eliminate the complexity. And without systems, like, it's very hard to get off the ground and get to the next level where you are able to go out and do what you were still doing without spending all of your time doing the managing of the people and the things.
Yep.
Any plugs you want to give on systems? What would be a way to master systems?
Well, I think systems, a lot of times people will say they have like a control issue and they're afraid to let go of that control. Like, this is my business and no one's going to do it as good as me. And the system helps you let go, I think. And to master systems, again, it's training. And I think in this area, especially in the beginning phases of building a team or hiring, coaching is very helpful. Like working with someone who's done it before or coached on it before.
Yeah.
Because it's, we have this book. This book is great. But I would say most people can't just read it and then be able to do everything it says. Like having a coach to help you work through the systems and putting the systems in place and consulting with others who've done it before you would be so much better.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. And mainly because it's such a hard area for people to grow as a person, letting go of control. And now, like, you're moving into letting systems take over the responsibility of your control, and people take over the responsibility as well. And it's just easier. Like, that's what I always hear in coaching. They're like, it's just easier if I just pick up the phone and call my person.
Right.
Why do I have to go in and check this thing? And like, because the checking the thing gives everybody else control of their time. When you have to keep contacting somebody and they have to keep contacting you, you are now at the mercy of their time. And when they need you.
Yep.
That's not control of your life. That doesn't give you that just gives you control of when you get information.
Yep.
And the downside of that is it gives you control of how much information you get. Because now you can only get the information you called to ask for. If everything was in a system, you could get whatever you want, whenever you want. So it's pretty cool. I always get excited about this because, it's kind of like you said, when I see people grow the most in this phase, I see the most personal development while doing the professional development. And when you see people get into systems and really allow the system to take over, and I'd love to get into 5 million specific examples,
Yeah.
but when you allow the system, that's when you see people have that aha moment, get their, time and life back and the balance in their life. Like when you see all that happen and unfold, it's pretty cool. I mean, for me, like, at least that's why I do what I do.
Right.
Because you get this, it's a total growth thing for people. They get to go to another level, and it has a lot of impact on their lives and their ability to do things. The last thing I'll say about that is what this says, lays foundation for growth, is like, this is your springboard. Once you get this in place and you're like, okay, man, now that I have a system, I can put 4 more people in here. And then those 4 people are going to grow this. I no longer have to go in and do that thing with that person 4 more times, right? Or you certainly are going to have a real hard time taking all of those like informational calls from 4 more people. That doesn't work. And you can't call 4 more people for their results. That doesn't work. So the reason this is my favorite is it just gives you the scale. It allows you to scale your business so quick after this. So
I definitely agree.
any other notes you would add to that?
No, I love the respect for time piece of it. because I think a lot of times too, we think, oh, I'm just going to call this person real quick. And that leads us to, the got a minute issues.
Mhm.
And I think it was Dave Hook that told me that he read a book and there was a study. So when you take somebody away from their current focus, even if it's for 1 minute, it takes them another 15 minutes to get back into that rhythm that they
Yep.
were in. So those interruptions throughout the day is hurting their productivity, and it's your fault, and you're paying them to do the job. Let them do the job,
Mhm.
respect their time. And when you have this system, you're not causing them to maybe fail because you're interrupting them so much.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, and when I look at this, and this is where I'll start talking forever. But so I'll glaze over it sort of, excuse me, because here's why I'll glaze over it. Not just because we're short on time, and we're going to dive into this later. You'll notice that level 4, it says leverage buyer side, and level 5 says leverage seller side. And in today's market, and this is why coaching is important alongside of the models, right?
Yep.
If you were to go and just take this model and this business planning clinic and just go and implement it, well, it's not the best thing for today's market. The difference between level 4 and level 5 is not the best thing for today's market.
Okay.
So, because if you were to pursue a leverage on the buyer's side, before leverage on the seller side, you may end up with a bunch of buyers agents that don't have a lot of inventory to buy. So in today's market, and again, it's not a black and white thing you definitely have to do. It depends on what fits your models. Maybe you have a lead generation model that's very strong for buyers. Maybe you have a budget model that can't afford to go out and do a whole lot of seller lead generation. But your agents are good at prospecting buyers, things like that.
Yep.
So none of these pieces of advice are made in a vacuum. You have to look at the other pieces as well. When I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is, if this is me, today's market is not the best place to, I would flip-flop these and put leverage on the seller side first, because we need inventory in order to grow. Growth right now on your team would be challenging on the buyer side. So now there's other problems, or there's other solutions that you could have in order to balance this out. I just thought it was worth mentioning that it's important to consider your current circumstances, the market circumstances, when you're going from one level to the next, and how you build this out. Well, what I like about this is, you have showing assistant, outbound sales associates, which are ISAs. ISA is inside sales associate. It's a phone caller who sits in the office, follows up with leads, prospects, and sets appointments. Some people may not know that. Lead buyer agent, lead manager. So the lead manager, in this case, would also be responsible for generating leads, right? This is either your future marketing director, could also be your future lead ISA or lead inside sales associate. So lead manager, they're going to have a position of managing other ISAs. So you see that there in part 2. Here's one thing I want to mention about going from part 1 to part 2, because I was coaching Shannon yesterday on this. And I said, when you hire a showing assistant, hire them as if you want them to be your director of sales. Don't just hire them because they make a good showing assistant. Now, does the person with the personality profile who wants to sit in a showing assistant seat, do they have the personality profile to be a director of sales? This is where that career visioning process comes in. You really want to match, their behavioral assessment, their wants, their goals, their skills. You want to match all of that stuff up to the position and their growth. And that way I know when I'm hiring somebody now and I'm putting all this time and effort into them, like they're going to fit this position, but then they're also going to fit this position. And then they're going to fit that position. And that's the person I want to hire. I can always hire a showing assistant to be a showing assistant, so long as my need is to have that showing assistant stay there. And neither one of us expects them to go somewhere else other
Right.
than a showing assistant. That's their goals and aspirations, right? And that's great. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there, agents who are either part-time or even just not doing a lot of business, that's all they want to do, because that fills their bucket. That's what they enjoy doing, and that's what their aspirations are. So that's a good thing too. I'm just saying, if I'm in a growth phase and I'm trying to grow the business, I want to hire people who are going to grow. And ideally, I'm going to hire somebody who's going to just keep growing. And I want that person in my showing assistant position who's going to eventually want to be the best that they can be and eventually be a director of sales. Or maybe they say, hey, I don't like director of sales, but I would love to lead a team of buyer's agents. I would love to do that. Right. So it's always important to know, as you go to build and go from one step to the next, when you're hiring somebody, you want to look for, that's going back to talent. Maybe we should get to that slide as a closer. So any advice you can give us in growing through these models?
I could literally think of specific people that I know, they started out as a showing agent because that's what filled their bucket at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But then they learned and they grew, and then, they became an ISA, and then they learned and they grew, and now they're managing other ISAs. And the beauty of it is you're filling people that you are already culture fits. They're capable because they've proven themselves to you. You're growing them into the harder positions, I think, that are to fill.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're keeping the higher turnover, if you will, in the easier positions to fill.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You don't just want anybody to be your sales director. You
Right.
don't want to hire a sales director. I think it'd be much better that you could grow somebody within your organization that trust. And then the higher turnovers in the showing assistant. Because let's face it, that a lot of times that is, it's entry level, if you will, or just not something that people want to sustain for a longer period of time. There might be people out there who love it. Kudos to them. But that tends to just be the position that people grow out of.
100%. It's a really good point. Yeah, so we hire on will, skill, behavioral assessment, and trust. And there's all kinds of trust exercises you can do. Core values exercises is one of them. And, will is how bad do they want it? How bad do they want this position? How bad do they want growth? Skill is pretty simple. It's on their resume. Do they have it or not? But you can usually train or coach out of that or up, right? And then the behavioral assessment is very important to just know, how long is somebody going to be a fit for this job? Is it a natural fit for them, or are they modifying their behavior and what drives and motivates them in order to fit into this position? But we don't use those as black and white labels either.
Right.
It's really just a behavioral assessment to tell us what truly drives and motivates you. Do you prefer to be independent, or do you prefer to be collaborative? Those sort of things. Let's end real quick on the talent versus not talent, since it came up so much. This is yesterday. I was just sending this out. This is only half of our buyer agent manual that goes out for when you hire a buyer's agent for your team. So anyway, so here in talent versus non-talent, 30, 60, 90 is non-talent in a role brings you problems. Talent in a role finds you solutions. And again, we're not talking about talent like Kobe Bryant. We're talking about just simple behaviors that tell you whether or not this person is eventually going to be somebody who can rise to the top, or is it eventually going to be somebody who just probably is going to stay where they're at, right?
Yep.
Doesn't fulfill your needs, ends up giving you back pieces of their job. It's non-talent in the role. Talent in a role Just shares your goals and fulfills your needs as a natural byproduct of fulfilling their own. So we actually review this with the employee after they're hired. This is setting expectations of behaviors. And, somebody who looks at this and, they may look at this and say requires pushing, and they know that they require to be pushed. And my point there is, when you set expectations, a lot of times the issues are going to show up sooner, or they'll even voluntarily show you, or you'll see that it's an issue sooner. So this isn't just for us to think about and review in the background. This is for you to openly discuss with your hires. Do you believe this is you? Do you believe that you would fit these expectations? Doesn't know what they want and isn't searching. And talent in a role knows what they want or is actively searching to know. I love that one.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Requires pushing. It's pretty simple. Pushes you. And here's the guy, we got to stop right there because leadership, oftentimes you're like, man, why does this guy keep pushing? Just got here.
Right.
We just hired him. He already says he doesn't have enough to do. Right. So I love that. It's hard to get used to, but what I've learned to recognize it as talent in the role. So when they start pushing on me, now I enjoy it. I'm like, oh man, I love this. Yes, we're growing now. Right. Yeah. Non-talent in a role may not know where the existing bar is set or even what bar you're talking about. Excuse me, might have to read.
I feel like that is definitely the higher, that's your fault as a leader when somebody doesn't know where that bar is. But yeah. I always liked the opposite of that is the continually raising the bar. Because one thing that I've, just been taught is when you've hired good talent, they tend to make you a better leader. And
100%.
I think, and that comes with them. They're pushing you, they're raising the bar, they're helping you grow.
Bingo. You want to take the last two?
Yeah. Doesn't care who they spend time with and repels talent from them, versus talent in a role demands to be associated with talent and attracts talent to them. This is one that I definitely spent some time on in my personal life. It was just a matter of, I want to be here. And this is the people that I'm hanging out with. And it was surrounding myself with positive people who had growth mindset, because if I was hanging out with people who were just, and I'm not saying this is bad, I just wanted to be in a different spot. But if I was hanging out with only people that were content, with living paycheck to paycheck, I think it was going to hinder me. I had to be around like-minded people to grow.
Yeah.
So I see this with other people too. If they say they want to be here, but who they're hanging out with is down here, it's you're not going to attain that, because you need to have support with like-minded people. And then the last one is when they try to talk action and results, but they can't back it up. And talent in a role talks the language of action and results.
It's great. So as a sign off for anybody who's still listening now or made it this far, we are having career visioning training, which is essentially a hiring process, how to find talent, how to find and hire talent. And that's December 16th, which I believe is next Thursday.
Yep.
And it's from 9 to 4. You can join us here in the office, or we can send you a link to sign up. Brittany, maybe we could drop that in the comments for anybody who heard it here.
Yep, Michael.
And we just appreciate you guys coming to listen and learn. And we look forward to having you back again next Wednesday at 12 noon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brittany.
Bye.
Have a great day.